Types of motion. Now let's look at the types of motion. The first type of motion we'll be looking at is rectilinear motion. I just say this is the simplest type of motion because the definition can even be found in its name. Let's look at the name. We find the word line instead. So what does this tell us? This is a type of motion of a body in a straight line. So if a body is moving in a straight line, we say it's performing rectilinear motion. Now let's look at some examples of rectilinear motion. Do you remember the illustration we gave earlier on to describe motion? Yes, the rolling ball. Let's look at it again. So we can see illustration given here is an example of rectilinear motion since the ball is moving in a straight line. So we say this example is rectilinear motion. Now let's look at another example. Example 2. We can also see a car moving in a straight line on a straight path. Then what if the car is not moving or the body is not moving on a straight line but rather in about a circle? Very good. This brings us to the second type of motion, which is circular motion. So simply circular motion. This is the motion of a body around a circle. Look at this circle here. Let me draw this circle. This circle here. You all know that this part of the circle is called the circumference. So do you have an idea of a new definition you can give? Very good. So we can also see circular motion is the motion of a body along the circumference of a circle. Let's look at some examples of circular motion. Let's go to our solar system. Then we'll see real life examples of circular motion. Now, the Earth we are moves or revolves around the sun on its orbit, so it moves in a circular path. So, for example, if this is the solar system and we have the sun positioned at this point, the Earth here, since the Earth is moving around this path like the circumference of the circle, we see the Earth is performing circular motion. Now let's go to the third type of motion, which is the rotational motion. So rotational motion is the motion of a body around the fixed axis passing through the object. So it's the motion of a body around fixed axis passing through the object. So let's look at an example that will help us to broaden our mind on what rotational motion is. Look at this fan. This part of the fan is called an axle. Keep it in mind, this part of the fan is called an axle. Now, if the fan is turning, what happens? What do you observe? You're going to see that the axle is not going to move, but rather the blades or the circular part connected to the blades is going to move around this axle. So you are going to see that this axle is passing through it where these blades are moving around. So we see the fan is undergoing rotational motion. Now let's look at something. If you draw a hypothetical line through the fan, we call this line the axis of rotation. So if you draw a line passing through it, you are going to see that the fan will be passing around about the fixed point, which is this axis of rotation. But this axle is not going to move, but rather the fan or the blades of the fan are going to move around it. Let's go to the fourth type of motion. Fourth type of motion we'll be looking at is periodic motion. Now, what is periodic motion? It's a type of motion that repeats in equal intervals or the same intervals in time. Let's look at this example here. We have the circle we have a car moving from this point, going around. We can see this point here is the beginning and the end of the path in which the car is moving. So the car moves from this point and comes back to this point. The first round, it took 5 seconds. It went again in the same path, moved again. In the second round, it also took 5 seconds. And in the third round, it also took 5 seconds. So we are going to say this car is in a periodic motion. This is because the car is repeating. The car in motion repeats in the same interval of time. So in the first round, it took 5 seconds. The second round, it took 5 seconds. The third round, it took 5 seconds. So this car moves in the same interval with the time. Now let's look at some real life examples of periodic motion. Let's go back to space again, our solar system, the moon. Now for this example, I'm going to use the moon and the earth. So let's look at, this is the earth and this is the moon. So this moon is orbiting around the earth. So we say that the moon is in a circular, it moves in a circular path around the earth. So we all know that it takes the moon 27 days take a complete move around this earth. So taking one round, the moon moves 27 days around the earth. Now let's go back to our car illustration. Look at this car. We say it's in periodic motion, but do you know the car is performing circular motion? Very good. So what does this tell us? This simply tells us that objects or bodies can undergo one type of motion at a time. This car can undergo one type of motion at a time. So it can go a circular motion and a periodic motion. So keep it in mind. A body can undergo or perform one type of motion at a time. If you have any question, please leave it in the comment section. Thank you.